from the judges and the attorneys and all of them. And then the first Judiciary Act and what's called savings to suitors. The savings to suitors clause of the first Judiciary Act of 1789 then comes into effect. And these are being developed now as a higher level strategy to get accountability in the courts. And that's what we're working on now. So next time I come back, I'll report on how we did on the cases that we're proceeding. And I think our time is probably about up, and I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Yeah, we can take questions.
We're going to have a quick question and answer. We'll take about 8 minutes. We have a microphone set up right here in the back. Ron, if you'll take this microphone, we're going to have a double mic. Anybody that has any questions?
Will you go back and handle my book table? All the books are 30, the new service is 5.
A question for Johnny. Not editorials. I don't want to hear your life history and what you've done. Questions for Johnny only. If you get into an editorial, we'll cut this out. So if you'll step right up here, and Johnny, you're right. I'm taking it. Over here, please.
Okay, I guess we're going to go behind the microphone here. After the question period, I'm going to be behind here for some time, and I'll have books back there and other things, and we can talk later. So let's go with the first question.
If you could address the difference between being a resident and a citizen. Sometimes like when I explain things to people, they never seem to understand that. It's kind of something you didn't touch on. The legal definition of a resident versus a citizen.
Okay, it might help clarify that a resident is a corporate citizen with a little c. What you are as a sovereign citizen with a big C is you are domiciled in a state, or you are an inhabitant, a free inhabitant of that state. That's how you refer to yourself and make the distinction clear. A resident is a corporate citizen, by definition.
How do you know if, like I bought my own property and built my house on it, how do I know if it's, what do you call it, allodial in my name, or it's owned by the state?
You can assume that it is owned and controlled by the state if you have a deed and haven't updated the land patent.
Grant deed.
You have a grant deed? Yeah, it's the same thing. It's still a deed. It's one of the many different types of deeds. What you need to do is update the land patent from the BLM, which used to be the Land Patent Office. You get an original copy, and then you rewrite the legal description, and then you file it back with the county recorder. And that's how you update the land patent. You give them notice to anybody with an equity interest in the property. They have 60 days to challenge you in court. If they don't, it is automatically updated.
How do you give them notice?
You give them notice by either publishing it in a legal publication for a period of time, or you actually send them a notice in the mail.
During the Civil War, it was very confusing. What the prince, one of the Prince of England, who was the son of the King of England, was with the Southern Army, the Confederate Army, the Rebel Army. And it seems like the monarchy of England was for the South, but then they were supposed to be controlled by the banks of Europe.
I think there's some exceptions to that. From my studies, the Bank of England was the primary sovereign behind the North, and the Bank of France behind the South. Now, there might have been some personal family differences going on.
Yeah, they helped us in the Revolution, too.
Right. Yeah, so.
If you've gotten a passport 8 or 10 years ago, and you made the mistake of filling out with a social security number or making other mistakes, if you go down and get a new passport, can that be corrected from any errors you may have made in the past? Or is that a record there that stays forever?
There is no record that stays forever. Anything that is done under mistake or error or under fraud or under misrepresentation or not full disclosure, you can revoke. And so if you've made a mistake in the past and entered into contracts that you really didn't understand the implications, you can revoke them. And you can revoke your signature, for example, on a traffic citation. If they force you to sign it under threat of arrest, you can either revoke it right there on the spot by putting without prejudice UCC 1-207 in the box, Or the next day you can file an affidavit with the county recorder revoking your signature.
I'd like to know what suggestions you have as to what's important, most important, in your opinion, for us to do at this time, personally on a small level and then a bigger level also. Thank you.
Love your neighbors as yourself. The golden rule applies. Stockpile a certain amount of food and water and other items, and a surplus of certain things that you want to be able to trade with your neighbors, so that you really look out for your neighbors and everybody in your area. I think that's the most important thing. And then if you've got a little piece of extra energy left around, then you might want to confront the power structure in some regard. But begin by getting the home and the family and the community in order so that you can have a support group.
I'd like to make a comment on what you just said. The Los Angeles County Recorder will not record anything unless they had an original document that you had filed years ago. Then they will revoke the you can revoke the signature on it. Now they will not record any new document.
Well, the Los Angeles County Recorder has been inundated with state citizens for so long, they finally got wind that people are actually getting their rights back. So what has to happen is the county recorder has to be taken to task and sued, because the California codes specify very clearly what the performance of the county recorder is, and they are violating the law, and thus they need to be sued and taken to task for it. So that's what you need to do. And it's just another hurdle, but it's one that's going to have to be jumped over. They're not obeying the law.
My question is, why do we have, what's the reasons for the national debt?
The reason for the national debt? The national debt is a fiction. It doesn't really exist. It was created as a bookkeeping ledger, basically, to convince everybody to work real hard all of their life and end up with nothing and have it all transferred into the hands of a few people. It's a complete fiction. Whether it's a $15 trillion debt or a $5 trillion debt or a $50 debt, it makes no difference. We have to repudiate it, and basically as though it doesn't exist, because it doesn't really exist. And every contract that has been generated since the country went bankrupt is also a fraud and can be repudiated.
I just wanted to comment on when you were referring to the Civil War and the Confederacy. There were some English constituents who were behind the Confederacy. They were waiting for a decisive victory of the Confederacy before they did something about the naval blockade and so forth. I just wanted to...
Oh, good. I'm sure there are. I'm sure there's a lot of exceptions to the generalizations, indeed.
Tell us a little bit about yourself and the organization that you represent, if there is one.
Well, myself, I'm a whole systems educator, a researcher, and a teacher, and a writer. And the organization, the Cascadian Resource Center, is more of a network than it is an organization. We have about 105 different researchers around the country, and we collaborate with each other to try to share information, particularly in the areas of litigation and developing legal strategies. That's our primary focus right now in terms of action.
I'm working with some Republicans on consideration of how to write up the voter registration, and I'm trying to put common sense in here to apply to patriots. Obviously, let's put it this way, the state citizens have an angle of which I think should have consideration here. Is there a way that the state citizen movement, those involved in state citizen, can vote under a given circumstance? Could the registration be written in a way in which the state citizen could feel comfortable without compromising their position?
I suppose it's possible to do so. The voting, as we know, have it in the forms, are only for United States citizens. Now, either the county elections department needs to be ordered to create the appropriate forms for the state citizens, number one, or the U.S. citizen forms, which unfortunately are a hidden contract too. They not only register you to vote, but they make you obligate you to the county, state, and municipal bonds. That is a contract, the voter registration. So you don't want to have that come along for the ride, so you wouldn't want to just simply cross out U.S. citizen and put state citizen, then the state citizen would be obligated to the bond. So either you've got to get the proper form work, or the state citizens need to re-inhabit the Electoral College, which was there as a check and balance against the popular vote. That's where state citizens actually were. The sovereign people were the electoral colleges at one point, and they had veto power over the popular vote.
Now, I need actual black and white proposal for the for wording on a registration for voting that those who are out of the system for various means would feel comfortable in signing. So I'm open for suggestions, because I'm making suggestions myself. I'm doing thinking. So if anybody has anything to offer in that area, it would be appreciated.
Thank you so much.
Give Johnny a big hand on that.
Thank you.